Hey Goblin, you've been really practicing those war drums.
I'll bring the generic Goblin noise!
Hey gang! Using the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, will get you 10% off any order over $10 at Flipside Gaming. It'll also get you 10% off any orders of singles at Multizone. And it'll get you 10% off most products at Original Magic Art, with the exceptions of some paintings. If these fine sites don't have what you're looking for, you can also consider using my affiliate link when ordering from TCG Player. And if you'd like to join the Generic Goblin Gang to support this channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description below. Today's game is another multi-zone matchup, and I'm wearing Seb's Gargos deck, keeping a Genesis Hydra, Path of Ancestry, Nykthos, 2 Forests, Harrow, and Myriad Landscape. Seb is playing his Golos deck, keeping a Simic Signet, Command Tower, Orzhov Signet, Path of Ancestry, Lurking Predators, Rampant Growth, and Breeding Pool. Max is playing his Estrid deck, keeping Sylvan Library, Sheltered Eyrie, Return to Dust, Simic Growth Chamber, Command Tower, and Abundant Growth. Dom is playing Yarok, keeping an Island, a Forest, Woodland Bellower, Tatyova, Unbound Flourishing, and Mystic Remora. I win the die roll and start us off. I play a tap Myriad Landscape. Dom plays an Island and casts his Mystic Remora. Seb plays a tap Path of Ancestry. Max plays an Island. I also play a tap Path of Ancestry and pass to Dom. Dom pays for his cumulative upkeep cost for his Mystic Remora, draws, and plays a Forest. Seb plays a Command Tower and casts Rampant Growth. Since he can't pay 4, Dom gets to draw. Max plays a Command Tower and casts Sylvan Library, and once again Dom gets to draw. I play a Forest and pay 2 to activate my Myriad Landscape, sacrificing it to find 2 forests and passing. Dom pays 2 for his Mystic Remora, and then discards down to 7 after drawing. Seb plays a tap Breeding Pool and casts Simic Signet and then an Orzhov Signet, letting Dom draw 2 more cards, which are hopefully lands. Max uses his library trigger and loses 4 life to keep an extra card. He plays a Plains and casts Farseek. Dom draws again as Max finds a land, and Max then ponders, throwing all caution to the wind by continuing to let Dom draw another card. I play a Forest and cast Ulvenwald Tracker. Dom doesn't pay for his Remora, having drawn a bunch, and draws for turn. He casts a Lotus Cobra and plays an Island. He makes a green mana as it comes in, and casts a Coiling Oracle. He reveals an Archaeomancer off the top, puts it to his hand, and then discards down to 7, passing turn. Seb plays another Mountain, and pays 6 mana for Lurking Predators. Max uses his library trigger, and just draws the 1. He pays 4 for Return to Dust, targeting the Lurking Predators and a Signet on Seb's side of the board. This triggers the enchantment, and Seb reveals a Karthus off the top, putting him into play. Max then passes. I draw and play a Forest. I cast Ronus' Monument and then Nissa Vastwood Seer. I get a trigger from the Monument on casting Nissa, giving the tracker +2/+2 in Trample, and then go and find a basic Forest from my hand as she enters. I then pass to Dom. Dom plays an Island and makes a black mana from the Lotus Cobra trigger. He then casts Vampiric Tutor and goes to find a card and put it on top, losing 2 life. He then casts the earlier revealed Archaeomancer, returning the Vampiric Tutor to his hand as it enters, and Dom then passes. Seb casts Golos and shortcuts to drop Bloom Tender before going to find a land. He then passes while searching. Max uses his library and only draws the 1. He casts Archon of Sun's Grace and then plays a Simic Growth Chamber, returning a land to his hand as it enters. I draw and play a Nykthos, transforming Nissa into the Sage Animist. I uptick her as someone passing by kicks the tripod and reveal a Prey Upon. I then cast Gargos, getting 2 triggers, one from the Monument, which I put onto the tracker, and a Scribe from the Path of Ancestry, which I bottom. Dom casts Skyshroud Claim and goes to find 2 forest cards. He grabs an Overgrown Tomb and a Forest, which both come in untapped, meaning Dom loses 2 from the tomb. He also gains 2 mana from his Lotus Cobra, and he then casts an Unbound Flourishing before passing turn. Seb draws and casts Mirari's Wake. He then taps his lands for 2 now and activates Golos' ability. He exiles a Doom Whisperer, Wooded Foothills, and a Malfagor to the ability. He then plays the Malfagor, discarding his hand, and basically nuking his opponent's creatures, forcing us to sacrifice them. He then casts the Doom Whisperer and plays the Wooded Foothills as his land drop. He then sacrifices it to find a Temple Garden, and loses 2 to have it come in untapped. This plus the floating mana is enough to activate Golos again. This time he exiles a Birds of Paradise, Selesnya Signet, and Dragonlord Dromoka, casting them all. Seb then moves to combat, and can attack with all of his dragons at least thanks to Karthus, and he goes at Dom. Dom doesn't block, and takes the 25, with some of it being from Golos, and Seb then gains some life from Dromoka as well, and he passes turn. Max uses his library again, only drawing the 1. He plays a Plains and goes Shields Up with a Ghostly Prison, and then casts Eternal Witness. It enters, and he returns Return to Dust to his hand, and passes. I draw, upticking Nissa, revealing a forest off the top and putting it into play. I then play a forest for my turn. I tap out for a Genesis Hydra where X is 8, and reveal off the top, and keep a Hydra Omnivore, and pass. At the end of turn, Dom casts his Vampiric Tutor again, losing 2 life while he finds a card to put on top of his library. Dom draws, and plays a Swamp off the top. He makes a mana with the Lotus Cobra, and then taps 6 more lands to overload a Cyclonic Rift. Moving to combat, Dom then hits Seb for 2 with his Lotus Cobra, and passes. Seb draws, and plays a Polluted Delta. He recasts the Mirari's Wake, which Dom counters by slamming out a Force of Will, losing 1 life, and exiling a Hostage Taker. Seb then plays out his Orzhov Signet, and cracks his Delta. He loses a total of 3 to find an untapped Hollowed Fountain, and then casts Selesnya Signet, and then Bloomtender again, before passing to Max. Max pays 3 for a Sheltered Area onto his island, and then taps out completely for a Windborn Muse. I recast Nissa Vastwood Seer again, and go and find a forest, putting it to hand. I then play a forest and transform her. I uptick her again, revealing a forest off the top, and putting to the field. 8 mana then gets me my commander again, and I scry 1. Dom casts a Bramble Sovereign in his main phase, which is one of my favorite green cards, and he then passes turn. Seb recasts Golos, and goes to find a land as he enters, putting a Savannah to the field. Seb then activates Golos again, hitting a Fetid Heath, Dockside Extortionist, and Sarkhan the Mad. He plays or casts them all, and gains 2 treasure tokens from the dockside as it enters. Max tosses Seb a treasure token, while I read whatever it is that Sarkhan the Mad does. Max casts Abundant Growth and enchants his plains with it, drawing as it enters. 4 mana then gets him Estrid, and he taps his enchanted island for 2 mana, casting Sylvan Library. Max then upticks Estrid, untapping his enchanted permanents. He taps those lands again for 3, casting Ghostly Prison once more, and passes to me. I draw, and play a forest, and I then uptick Nissa, revealing Homeward Path, and putting to the field. I tap 6 mana for Rishkar's Expertise, which I don't think I even have to argue for being the best expertise in all, and draw 8. 3 of them are lands, and 2 of the spells find lands, so it's not super great. I resolve Nature's Way as the spell I can cast for free from it, and I target Gargos with it. I have the Gargos fight trigger take out Golos, and then resolve the Way's damage on Bloomtender. Moving to combat, Seb and Gargos become reacquainted as I deal 8 to him. In my post-combat main phase, I resolve Hero's Bane using the Path of Ancestry and scrying 1 and bottoming it. I then resolve Wood Elves, grabbing another forest, and I pass to Dom as I discard down to 7. Dom casts Tatyova and plays an Urborg. He gains 1 life and draws a card with Tatyova's trigger seeing the land enter. Dom then casts Gonti and targets Max as he enters. Dom takes the card he wants from the top 4 and passes to Seb. Seb recasts Golos, who enters and finds him an exotic orchard. He then taps his remaining mana and uses the treasures to activate Golos once more, exiling his top 3. He hits a Misty Rainforest, Mind's Desire, and Gruul's Signet. He casts the Signet and plays the Misty, losing 1 as he sacrifices it to find a land. Seb then taps the forest he found for his Birds of Paradise. He then gets to cast Mind's Desire and gets 3 storm copies of it. He shuffles and reveals each time, heating a Vorinclex off the first, Palladium Moors off the second, a Swamp off the third, and Scourge of Valakut for the last one. As the Scourge comes in, it'll deal 2 damage to any target. Seb decides to pick my Wood Elves, and with the trigger on the stack, I activate Nykthos for some mana. I then use the mana to activate Hero's Bane's ability, giving it X+1/+1 counters where X is its power, so in this case 4. The Wood Elves then dies. Seb then downtakes Sarkhan the Mad, and his dragons deal damage to take Dom out. Max uses his library trigger, and loses 4 to keep an extra. He plays a Glacial Fortress, and pays 3 for an Overgrowth, and puts it onto the fortress. He then taps the Command Tower and the Fortress for 4 mana to recast his Return to Dust again, this time exiling Golos and another Signet. Max then upticks Estrid, untapping his enchanted permanents, and passing to me. I draw and play a Forest. I tap the Forest to cast Prey Upon, having the Hero's Bane fight Vorinclex, and Gargos fight the Scourge. I then uptick Nissa, revealing Vigor and putting to my hand. 3 mana then gets me back to Ronus' Monument, and I cast a Steelbane Hydra where X is 4 for only 2 green mana thanks to Gargos. The on-cast trigger from the Monument then goes on to Gargos, and I then play out an Iron Scale Hydra, giving the Hero's Bane +2/+2 and Trample as well thanks to the Monument. I then swing everything at Seb. He decides not to block, forgetting about the Hero's Bane activation, which I do. It's currently got 10 power, which gives the Bane another 10+1/+1 counters, and I take Seb out. With nothing else, I pass to Max. Max uses his library and draws. He taps the Glacial Fortress for 3, and casts Cultivate to find a basic for the field and 1 for his hand. He plays the forest he found from his hand as his land for turn, and Max then plays his own copy of Vigor, and upticks Estrid, untapping his enchanted permanents before passing turn. I untap all but 1 forest, which still has the Vorinclex effect on it. I then draw. I uptick Nissa, revealing a Hydra and putting it to my hand, and then playing a forest. I activate Nykthos for a lot of green mana, using some of it to cast Doubling Season. I then play out a Genesis Hydra where X is 4 from Gargos. I use the Monument trigger to give the Bane +2/+2 and Trample, and then reveal off the top. I select Sylvan Library, putting it to field, and then resolving my Hydra, who comes in and gets 8 +1/+1 counters thanks to the Doubling Season. I then activate the Steelbane, removing a counter from it to blow up Max's Ghostly Prison, and I go to combat. I swing the Bane at Max, paying the 2 for the Windborn Muse, and Max responds before moving to blockers by overloading Cyclonic Rift. I return all of my non-land permanents to hand, and I then move to my second main phase, recasting Gargos and scrying 1. I bottom it and discard down to 7. Max uses his library and pays 4 to keep an extra card. He casts a Steadison Champion and downticks Estrid. He mills himself for 7 and then brings back his enchantments. It's only 2, the Ghostly Prison and a Sandworm Convergence, which lets him put 2 +1/+1 counters onto the champion and draws him 2 cards. Max then uses Reality Shift on Gargos, and I have Gargos fight his Vigor before I manifest off the top. I then take 2 in the air from the Windborn Muse, and he moves to his end step, spawning a 5/5 worm from the Convergence. I cast Nissa, finding a forest, and then playing it and transform her. I then cast Boundless Realms, and go to find what I hope is all of my remaining basics. I find 13 more, which is still not as many lands as I have, but it'll do. I then drop Doubling Season, and uptick Nissa, revealing a super helpful Explosive Vegetation. I then manifest or transform, or whatever you want to call it, my Whisper of the Wilds, and pass to Max. Max uses his library, but only draws the 1. He plays a forest, and recasts Eternal Witness, returning his Vigor to his hand. He then recasts it, and upticks Estrid to untap his Chanted Permanents. Max then moves to combat, swinging the Champion and the Muse at Nissa, and the Worm at me. I block the Champion, with Nissa taking 2, and I take 5 to the face. Max then passes, gaining another Worm at the end of his turn. I untap into Dom's space because my lands are so numerous. I then uptick Nissa, revealing Vines of the Vastwood. I then play out Gargos, followed by Hero's Bane. It comes in with 8+1/+1 counters because of my doubling season. I then replay the Monument, the Library, and then cast my own copy of Vigor. I then pass to Max. At the end of my turn, Max uses Swords to Plowshares, targeting my Vigor. With the Gargos trigger happening because he targeted something of mine, I respond before resolving it by using Vines of Vastwood to give Vigor hexproof. This gives me another Gargos trigger, and I decide to have Gargos fight Max's Vigor, which has Gargos taking 5, which is then replaced by my Vigor trigger to give it 5+1/+1 counters, which is then doubled to 10 because of doubling season. I then have the Gargos second trigger also target Gargos, having the Hydra fight the champion. This has Gargos taking 3 more damage, which translates into 6+1/+1 counters. Max uses his library and draws only 1. He then downticks Estrid to give one of his worms a Mask Aura, and passes to his end step, making another worm token from the Sandworm Convergence. At the end of turn, I activate Nykthos, making 10 mana, and then activate the Hero's Bane, going up to 24 +1/+1 counters. I then activate it again, going up to 72 counters. On my turn, I use my library trigger and take 4, keeping an extra card. I cast a Steelbane Hydra, where X is 4, giving the Hero's Bane +2/+2 and trample. The Hydra then comes in with 8+1/+1 counters on it, one of which I remove to blow up the Ghostly Prison. Moving to combat, I pay 2 to let the Hero's Bane attack Max, and even with blockers declare, Max and I are pretty sure I have it in the bag. I still go that extra mile though, activating the Hero's Bane 4 more times, which is way higher than I want to count to, so if you know, leave a comment down below. Max agrees that he's dead, and we go to the next game. Game review time. I was really impressed with Seb's Gargos deck, even though it seemed like at several points in the game I was only drawing or flipping lands with Nissa. The fact that I was able to fight a creature with Gargos or any other creature that I wanted whenever someone casts a spell on my creatures was also fantastic, so I can see why this is a fun commander to build around. This game was one of the very few games where I've ever played against Dom, and his deck has underperformed. He seemed to really struggle early on, and by the point that he was able to get back up and running, it seemed like he was on the defensive. Seb's Golos deck was Dragon Tribal if you didn't notice, and it was really cool to see. I think it's an interesting idea being able to activate Golos and potentially ripping into 3 dragons you can cast for only 7 mana. I was also really happy to see cards like Lurking Predators and Sarkhan the Mad, which are things I don't typically see. Max's Estrid deck certainly was a control deck in this game, and it seemed to be building up slow momentum until the late game where I think he was hoping to overtake me with the Sandworm Convergence. I think had he been able to draw more board wipes as opposed to single target removal, he would have been in a better position, as I was able to fight creatures that he wanted to save otherwise. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/mtgmudsta, and lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/mtgmudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.